Today we are going to be undervolting the RTX 5000 series graphics cards, in particular the RTX 5070 Ti. Now, if you've got a 5080 and a 5090 or a 5070 or upcoming 5060, these settings are going to be pretty much universal, but they will differ a little bit, especially if you've got an overclocked model, but we will talk about that as we are undervolting. However, for this tutorial, you will need MSI Afterburner, and also an optional download is Unigine Heaven, especially if you just want to quickly and easily test stability. But I do recommend loading up a game in windowed mode, like we've done right here with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, so you can see the FPS as well as the wattage that your GPU is using up in real time. Now, I've got this fancy overlay here with River Tuner installed with MSI Afterburner. It's an optional install. If you want to know a tutorial on how to get this overlay working like I've done here, I'll put a link to a video I did a long time ago, but it still is the exact same method. I'll put the link up here for you guys. You can check it out. But in the meantime, if you want to see your statistics quickly and easily, you can just do so with opening the NVIDIA app and then opening the overlay and just going to show statistics. And mainly what we're looking for here is FPS and our GPU power and our core clock speeds. These are the three main things we want to see, as well as GPU utilization. Once we've got those metrics up, we can then start to monitor how much FPS we're getting for a given particular level of wattage, and then we can start this tutorial up as well by opening MSI Afterburner here. Now, what you want to do is go over and left-click this cogwheel here. Now, the overlays might be looking a bit different. If you do have a different looking overlay, the options should all still be there. You've just got to find out where they are. Now, the first thing you can do here is left click this cogwheel and sorry. And then left click unlock voltage control, unlock voltage monitoring, and then also left click start minimize, start with Windows. And then also what I like to do is go over to this tab right here. So user interface, left click that, and then left click and unselect show user interface tooltips, as well as show user interface hints. Left click apply, and then if it says the changes will be applied after restarting MSI Afterburner, do you want to restart it now? Just left click yes, and that'll just restart MSI Afterburner with our ability to now touch the voltage controls. Now, the first thing we want to do here is generally with our profile is we've got the default profile, and at this point in time, until we've locked in our undervolts and everything's stable, we actually want to go to save profile. So left click save, and we want to lock this in as 1. And what this is going to do is just make our default profile on 1. So if we come into a problem and we can left click this little Windows icon, make sure it's highlighted on 1. So what this is going to do is if we come into a crash while we're testing things and our PC restarts, it'll go back to the default profile. And this is important because if you go too crazy and you're on this last profile and it didn't work properly, it can just cause a lot of headaches where you have to sort of boot in safe mode and stuff like that. I've done this in the past. It's just so annoying and time wasting, but this is one thing that's going to save you if you come into an unstable clock. The next thing we're going to do is a generic, just type it in here, left click on this little box where the memory is, and just type in 1000 and click apply. And we'll click enter and then click apply. Now also we can hold down left click as well, and you can scroll this from left to right, and you can just go around 1000. Now you can drag this up to 2000, and a lot of times it will work on 2000. I've just found on the 5080 things can get a bit finicky at plus 2000. So a generic across the board test that I've done on all different models of RTX 5000 so far, plus 1000 has worked absolutely fine. So now the next thing we're going to do right now is we are going to open the voltage frequency response curve. And this is where we're going to go into our first profile that we're going to be showing you guys here today. Now, I have done all the testing with this stuff. I have pretty much eliminated all the headaches, and this is why I guess this tutorial could save you a lot of time, because I've just studied the behavior of these graphics cards, and it's very interesting to say the least how these cards work. You would think that at higher levels, you'd be able to get slightly more clock speeds, or it would scale more in a linear fashion, especially these lower levels, but you can actually get more like higher clock speeds at these lower levels than you can at these higher levels, despite the percentage gaps being just even that much more, right? So 600 megahertz at, say, for instance, we'll just reset this. So 600 megahertz at 1900 megahertz, for instance, that's like a 30% increase, right? But then if we go to 1000 millivolt, a 400 megahertz is where it roughly caps out at. That's only like a 20% increase. So you can just see that this silicon itself actually likes these lower voltage levels. And if you're wondering why, well, that's got to do with TSMC and the silicon itself most likely being designed for things like smartphones and lower power consumption. So us tech enthusiasts, guys, we kind of come last, as we're finding out now, even though we're the guys who built these companies up. But that's a whole different topic for another day. Let's just get back to our reset here. So anytime you make a mistake in this program, you can just click reset and it'll reset it for you. Now, one thing is too, before we do this, I am going to show you that this 1000 millivolt, I like to reference this as a point, and we'll see this highlighted speed on the left here, 2707 megahertz at 1000 millivolt. This is a non-OC model, a 5070 Ti Ventus. Now, if you have a OC model, it may be 2850, for instance, at 1000 millivolt. So just be sure to ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever level that we're locking in here, so we're going to go for plus 400 at 950, just be sure that your levels with a 5070 Ti are around the same as mine. So we're going to be going for 2950 at 950 millivolt. That's going to be our overclock here and our undervolt all in one with this first level that we're going to do here. But let's actually start the undervolt right now and lock it in and see the FPS difference right after today's video sponsor. Never pay full price for Windows 10 or 11 again. With today's video sponsor, VIP SCD Keys, you can get activated with the Windows 10 IoT LTSC license, which will last till 2032. Also, don't forget to use the coupon code TYC for a massive 30% discount. And there's also Windows 11 Pro too. Links in the description below. All right, welcome back to Tech Yes City. Here we're going to start off with our default profile here on 1. This is what your 5070 Ti will get out of the box when you first get it. And we can see here on a static screen, just looking at this tree over here, roughly 149 average FPS at 267 watts. Okay, so we're going to write that down just so we can get an understanding of our power savings. And 149 FPS. This is our default. This is out of the box for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's actually went to 270 there. And this is at 4K high settings with FSR 3.1. So we can compare today's results actually directly with the RX 9070 XT results that we did in a separate video up here. So you can see if you want to compare it just in these two games with the undervolts and make that decision if you're purchasing either this card or the RX 9070 XT, you can do that. But let's get right back into MSI Afterburner here and go to 1000 megahertz on that memory. Lock that in. Press enter. Then we're going to go Control F on our keyboard to open up this voltage frequency curve editor. Now what we want to do right here straight away is find our 950 millivolt point. And we're going to left click it, but we're also going to, before we left click it, we're going to hold shift on our keyboard. Then we're going to hold down the left click button and we're going to raise this 400 roughly megahertz. I like to go to around 2950. And then after that, we're going to just hover our mouse just to the right of it, hold down shift on our keyboard, and then scroll all the way to the right until we're out of the window. Then we're going to left click any part of any one of these dots, and then we're going to drag it all the way under. So this final point here is underneath this point right here. And then we are going to go back to MSI Afterburner here and just left click apply. And what that's going to do is then lock in the max limit at 950 millivolt. And it's also going to give us the max clock speed of 2950 megahertz. And then we're also going to close down this window. And then we're going to go to save here, left click save, and then save that as profile too. And now when we get back to our games, watch this. 155 average FPS. So we're getting higher average FPS. And we're doing so at 248 watts. So we're saving power. We're saving roughly 22 watts, I think it is, and we're gaining FPS. Actually went to 250 watts. So we're saving roughly 20 watts and we're gaining 6 FPS. So there's an overclock right there that's actually still an undervolt. So absolutely winning on our first profile. Let's now continue on with the second profile where we're going to left click, reset, and then we're going to hit Control F on our keyboard. as well as left clicking on this memory, lock in that 1000 megahertz, press enter. And then after this, we are going to find the 850 millivolt profile. But I'm going to save the best till last too, because number 3 is going to be the best. So we're going to find 850 here, hold down shift, and then we're going to hold down left click, and we're going to raise this 500 megahertz. So we're going even more ballsy. 2650 roughly, 2650 megahertz at 850 millivolt. And then that's that point right there. Just to the left of that, we're going to hover our mouse, hold down our shift on our keyboard, and then again, left click, hold down the left click on the mouse, and just drag all the way out of the window. Then hold down left click on any one of these points, drag that point down until this is under this. Go back to MSI Afterburner, left click apply, and then close this down. Click save, click profile 3, and then get back to the game and check the FPS levels right here, boys. 148 average FPS. But what you'll notice right here, very similar FPS to our default profile, but the power consumption is dropping down to 207 watts, a little bit higher than what it's showing, because it just keeps going, spiking a little bit higher than what we've done before, but 207 watts. So we're saving 63 watts and we're getting the exact same performance. But you'll notice the temperatures are starting to get lower on our GPU too. This is just a natural benefit, an augmented benefit of undervolting. Extremely good. Anyhow, that's our third profile. Let's get on to our last profile right now. So we're going to left click reset, and then we're going to lock in that memory again. And we're going to hit Control F. We're going to find 800 millivolt, because look at this. Look at that ramp up of clock speeds at these low voltage levels. It just wants to run. This GPU loves 800 millivolt. So what we're going to do right here is we're going to hold down shift, and we're going to go up 600 megahertz. Or we're going to actually push it to 2.5 gigahertz. And just to the left of that, same deal, drag all those points down. And then we're going to hit apply. We're going to close this window down. We're going to go back to these results here. And what have we got here? 143 average FPS at 185 watts. So we're saving another 22 watts. So versus the original profile, minus 85 watts for minus 7 FPS or minus 6 FPS. So absolutely minimal FPS losses here, but power drops of roughly 85 watts. So huge power savings here. And that is going to be, again, a 3-degree drop versus the previous profile. So our temperatures are just getting ice cold at this point in time. And also, I believe we have to save this profile too. So I got a bit ahead of myself here, but we can also, one thing we can also do in this software is if we left click on this cogwheel, we can go to profiles here and we can set hotkeys for all our different profiles. If left click the box, we can then type in Control F1, left click the box, we can type in Control F2, etc. And left click apply, left click OK. And what happens here is we can quickly hotkey between different profiles. So it's easy for me if I'm benchmarking, right? I can find out how these things are going to perform. But with that aside, let's benchmark officially, run some benchmarks in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and then we'll also benchmark Baldur's Gate 3 and talk to you guys about the results with these games. So finishing up with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, we saw here actually a really interesting result. And that was the 950 millivolt, that was like an overclock. That actually gave us better FPS and still lower power consumption. But then the next level, the 850 millivolt, slightly beat out the average FPS of the default profile, although the 0.1% low was one less. But 0.1% lows do differ slightly, especially from run to run. But then we saw that the final result, however, 800 millivolts, we saw that power consumption just drop down drastically, and 137 average FPS and 119.1% low. So this right here is an absolute poster child for undervolting, However, you may be wondering one more thing. What about power limiting the cards? At least in the case of this 5070 Ti, we've only got a power limit that goes down to 83%, but changing that versus these undervolt levels really didn't do anything. As opposed with the RX 9070 XT, the minus 30%, that actually helped us even more than our undervolt levels too. So that was a really good setting with AMD, but on the NVIDIA cards, it just doesn't work at all really. So really a setting that I'm just ignoring personally. But the next game, however, you might be thinking, well, I'm just going to go with the 850 millivolt level all day, every day, call it a day. Here's where Baldur's Gate 3, especially the benchmark that we're going to be doing, it just throws a whole curveball into the equation. And it shows you that the reason I've got these 3 different extra profiles on top of the default profile is because depending on what I'm doing, I can quickly hotkey in the right undervolt. And that's because this benchmark stresses the GPU very similar to a way that, say, a very intense benchmark like Firmark would. But let's get on to it anyway. So what we can see here in Baldur's Gate 3, benchmarking with this game was very interesting because our final profile, the plus 600 megahertz at 800 millivolt, this gave out the lowest FPS, of course, as it did in the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. But what we saw here was the power dropped the most, actually in a spectacular fashion, where the 850 millivolt was kind of closer to the original setting, with a plus 500 megahertz at 850 millivolt, that was actually significantly higher, and then also the default profile and our 950 millivolt setting, they were very close together in terms of FPS as well as power consumption. So for this particular example with Baldur's Gate 3, especially this Bilberbang benchmark, it really stresses the GPU in a different way. As you can see with the static screen, even right now as I'm recording this, 120 average FPS, but it drops off into the 70s whilst we're benchmarking. So with these 4 profiles now saved, let's jump over to a conclusion. So what we saw in today's video was, just like the RX 9070 XT example with AMD, undervolting on the RTX 5000 series can benefit you so much. You can gain sometimes a bit of FPS and still save power, or sometimes you can just lose a little bit of FPS, but then drop those power consumption figures significantly. We're talking in the realm of roughly 100 watts, especially if we go to that 800 millivolt level. So just like the RX 9070 XT, we get some big efficiency gains with undervolting these GPUs. In fact, it's so big that I do recommend doing this on the higher end models, especially the RTX 5080 and the 5090. Today we just did the 5070 Ti, but if you guys want, I can look at the 5080, the 5090 directly, as well as the 5060 and stuff like that. They do differ a little bit, but the same secret sauce is here. The methodology that I'm showing you here today, guys, you can test it for yourself. And in fact, you can use Unigine Heaven if you like, just to quickly see if that clock speed is going to be stable or not, and then test it out in games. But the problem is with Unigine Heaven, and the reason I didn't really focus on it today was because I wanted to show you guys, as we're locking in these profiles, the difference in just a static screen, the FPS differences you can expect, as well as the power savings with just an apples to apples example. And Heaven's just all over the place. The FPS changes all the time, even though it's really quick and easy to test things, especially stability. It's just one of those things where I'm not getting you guys concrete results to show you in real time. However, that said, today, besides the default profile, we got 3 different profiles that we locked in, and the results were extremely good. So undervolting the RTX 5000 series, heavily recommend it. Though, as we talked about in the intro, be careful if you do have an OC model, but you can just check that 1000 millivolt level, check what clock speed that is at, and then you can just pretty much compare that to our roughly 2700 megahertz at 1000 millivolt, and you can then say cascade off the levels of your overclocked model whether it's a 2850 at 1000 millivolt, you can then say, okay, what Brian got here today in his, I'll just minus 150 megahertz at all levels, and then I'll call it a day. And you should be happy and smooth sailing. Anyhow, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button for us. And if you have any questions or comments about today's undervolting and also overclocking tutorial, where it's technically overclocking as well, because we were getting better FPS, at least with the default profile versus the 950 millivolt, then be sure to hit that like button. And also, if you've stayed this far and you're enjoying that Tech Yes content, be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll catch you in the next one very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.